For the sake of the podcast and the recording, I'd like to thank everybody for coming again this evening and for giving us an opportunity to share with you a story really from a blank page, which I'm hoping other congregations haven't found themselves coming out of COVID, but I'm aware that some are. So I chose this title from New Shoots from Strong Roots, our story at Westgate Unitarian Chapel. And you'll see that this picture of the front of the chapel is something I'm incredibly proud of, because up until about 3 weeks ago, you could hardly see the right-hand side of the chapel for the enormous holly tree that had been growing and growing and growing and growing in front of the door on the right hand side, which was blocking the light. And we know that as high as a tree is, that's how deep the roots go. So those roots were heading very swiftly towards our catacombs and were causing some damage. So that I worked really hard with the conservation officer in Wakefield, and we were given permission to take that one down. And the light in the chapel now and on the chapel is absolutely stunning. It's phenomenal. So the idea of a new Unitarian community growing from the strong roots that have been left behind by our heritage, by our stories, and literally from the trees in the chapel garden that tell their own stories and have been witness to stories of the Unitarian movement, really resonates with me. So I wanted to share with you how it started and sort of where we're at. I made this slideshow and gave it to Lizzie about 4 weeks ago. So things have moved on quite a lot since then. So when we get to the end, I'll be able to catch you up a little bit beyond the last slide. Please, may I have the next slide? Brilliant. So my story begins with the chapel about 15 or 16 years ago, when I was looking for a venue to perform in Georgian folk, Republic of Georgian folk and secular music. I'd got involved with a choir over there and ended up actually representing the UK in a festival in the Republic of Georgia. And somebody put me onto Kate Taylor, who was our, who was absolutely instrumental. Obviously she's passed now. And she said, come to the chapel, come and see. And I walked in and I was so blown away by the architecture and just the feeling of it. Subsequently, we did lots of concerts there, and then I kept going back and returning back to the chapel for all sorts of different creative things, but never really thought about it other than it being somewhere that was really beautiful and a jewel in the crown of Wakefield. And then about 4 years ago or 5 years ago, I set up an arts company called Dreamtime Creative, and we specialize in working in the field of mental well-being, which is of course linked to the spiritual well-being of people, and working with connectivity and creativity in order to enable and embolden the female voice in a time when really women's voices and indeed all groups that are the other groups in a mainstream society are marginalized. So I got involved with the chapel. We were doing a project on Clara Clarkson. The lovely Paul Dawson commissioned us to do that. And that's when I started to feel like I couldn't leave the chapel. I was involved with the chapel. I was breathing the air in. There was something going on. There was like a calling, a connectivity. I don't know what was going on. I kind of don't analyze it that much. I just thought, yeah, there's something in the future for me here. So when we came out, I'd started to go to service, and when we came out of COVID in the June of 2000 and sort of 21, my mum was really, really sick, and she actually has died since then. She died of cancer, and she had a really long, difficult death. But I kept going to the chapel, and I found that it brought me real solace. And, you know, it was an opportunity to be quiet and reflect and just deal with the stuff that was going on in my personal life. Anyway, we sort of rolled a bit into September last year. And I said to the trustees, I looked at the building and I thought, this could be so much more. The gardens are amazing. There's a bit of work that needs doing on the building. I can see that. I'm no expert. And I said to them, do you want to talk about employing me? You know, I'm ready for the next challenge in my life. Things are moving forward, and I'm looking at growing Dreamtime Creative. And actually, this is a perfect place. It's a really good best fit. And they thought about it, and then they came back to me and they said, yes, we do. We actually want to employ you. So we negotiated a monthly, you know, an equal, fair exchange of opportunity of energy. And so I was able to bring with me all of my connections, my bid writing skills, my passion, enthusiasm, and people into the chapel. But the chapel was a little bit sorry for itself because it had just come out of COVID. Like a lot of our congregations, we'd been hit hard, and we needed to start from a blank piece of paper. So we started with a massive media campaign, a Facebook campaign, volunteers required. So we then, I find if you offer hot food and drinks for free, people come. I don't know what that's about, but they just go, oh, I'll go, all right, that's fine. So you can see all of these dates that we did. We set our boundaries. So that was January this year. Now, my mum actually died on the 23rd of January this year. So I may spearhead it, but behind me, I've got volunteers and people that have come with and have been associated with Dreamtime Creative. So I actually wasn't there for one of the, you know, for most of that week, but lots and lots of people were. And we were faced with, you can see this picture on the right-hand side of your screen, an environment that just had been left through nobody's fault. You know what it's like. You think, oh, I'll take that to the tip the next day. And then the days go into weeks, and then there's more rubbish. And then suddenly, you know, there's some fly tipping, and then you're like, oh, it's just too big for me. But when you've got a massive team of people, which you know yourselves because you lead in the community, many hands and all that. So we managed to clean up a lot of the chapel in that week. Please, could I have the next slide, Lizzie? So cleaning up inside and out, really important. You know, we tried to kind of prioritize, but we were working really instinctively. So the picture at the top you recognize, that was where the courtyard is now, and we've got benches and plants and things. So now it's absolutely beautiful area. We hand polished every single pew with vegetable oil. And we cleaned the dust and we vacuumed. And on the balcony in particular, I think there was probably corners of that balcony that hadn't been properly bottomed, as we say in Yorkshire, for some time. So, you know, people wear masks, and afterwards what came out of their nose was black. And, you know, so there's all these wonderful stories where people are putting their gloves on, cleaning, hoovering, and then oiling the pews. It's so the connection, the mindfulness that goes with putting love into, you know, pews that were there from before the 1880s, and you feel the stories coming through and the channeling and all of that. So lots of people that were involved in that just contacted me really quietly, knowing that, you know, things were really difficult with mum, saying thank you for this opportunity to make something beautiful, even shine even more beautiful. So the picture down on the left hand side there is our, what I quaintly call the parlour, because I used to be an English teacher, so it's all about the words with me. And this was the chapel's glory hole for years and years and years and years and years. And in there we have a staircase and, you know, red carpet, and there was always a Victorian umbrella stand. But you can just see a little bit in the corner there. That is a really old chair, I think from the 16th century, that I placed for the photograph, because as you've probably picked up, I'm quite canny when it comes to things like drawing attention and using social media. And then the picture on the bottom right hand side, we started to move everything to one pile because we were going to get a skip. And the skip was booked for the end of the week, and it was just like, it was a huge pile. The skip arrived, it was a council skip, and they said something along the lines of, "We're not coming through that gate, love," because the chapel gates are so narrow and they needed all this on the side, and so we didn't get a skip. We tried everything and we couldn't get a skip. In the end, we did, I think, 9 tip trips with a trailer on the back of a car. And, you know, we did it over a day or 2 days. And you just have to grit your teeth and crack on with it. So clean up inside and out. Please may I have the next slide, Lizzie. So spiritual cleansing is essential. I am a Reiki master. And the other lady in this little video I'm going to ask Lizzie to show you is she's a druid. She has qualifications in druidism. I've been a Reiki master for coming up to 30 years, and I feel, you know, when you walk into a building and you think, oh, something's not quite right here. And it felt like that. So I made the decision that I was going to do what I would normally do if energies needed clearing, and we cleansed the chapel. And this is just a little clip of that. So, you know, when we all know if buildings are left alone and nobody goes in, then other stuff moves in. And we all know that there's that connectivity. So you can see where Charlotte is standing right in the center there. And what this video doesn't show, because Shannon just finished recording at that time, is when we came together in the center, we couldn't move beyond that, and we must have spent 15 minutes clearing that particular space. Now that's just working with 2 really powerful healers, and it's really interesting because how do you know it's worked? Well, people they say it feels clean, it feels better, it feels really lovely. And as Unitarians, then, you know, I know that all this is okay. And actually I feel incredibly grateful that those particular spiritual skills, if you like, that I have and my friend Charlotte has been able to be used and best used in a way that is helping clear, ready for the next stage in our journey. Please, may I have the next slide, Lizzie? Thank you. Oh, okay, so gathering a community. Going back to the idea of what is the blank page, as I mentioned before, COVID's absolutely decimated Westgate Unitarian Chapel congregation. So we start again. We start from the beginning. We welcome back anybody who still wants to come, who's been involved in the past. And you can see the gentleman on the right, who's got grey hair. He's so happy because he works in the building next to the chapel in Pemberton House, which is actually part of our historical and heritage legacy. And he just saw a group of people gardening, cleansing, and he's like, I'm just gonna nip over. So he came over in his lunch hour and he said, what can I do? What can I do? He said, I've got my gloves. But it turns out he used to come to our meditation years ago and is just kind of dropped out of it. And so he's been several times come back just when he sees things going on, which is quite a lot in the garden. So what is a community? What is, and I've been thinking about this an awful lot, what is a community? Where does it come from? Does it have to be affiliated to the Unitarianism, or can it be people that just really feel better for being in the space? And certainly we've brought in through a whole range of different activities. So we've got gardening on the top there, we've got families involved. You can see that we're clearing that top bit on the right hand side. The lady on the left hand side moved bricks and we knocked down a load of walls in the garden that were not necessary anymore, and she moved those bricks and created it. Started to sculpt the courtyard area. And then with the lady on the right, the bottom picture of the right with the hat on, she has a disability and she just feels that coming to work in the garden helps her. And the lady on the left walks up and down past the chapel every day to get on the train and goes to work, and has seen what we've been doing, and just one day just turned up and said, I want to help. So it's about, I don't know, for me, we're in the middle of the city, and it's about shouting about and showing, doing, and saying, come in if you want to. And then that's gathering a community from across lots of different interests, if you like. And at that point, it was the garden. Please, may I have the next slide, Lizzie? So part of my personal philosophy is do what you say you're going to do and then tell people. So even if what you say you're going to do doesn't happen, tell them. Say, look, I've tried this, it hasn't worked. And do it really publicly, because people love stories. They love the story of like the underdog. And so you can see that on the top right hand side, that is the thing that Zoe was building out of the old bricks. On the left top hand side, these are the beginnings of the spring flowers that were planted by the community. At the bottom on the left, that's the tree coming down, you know, the holly that I was telling you about. And then on the right, I just wanted to show you that, you know, what we do is we do everything properly. We go for planning, we talk to conservation officers, we make sure that we're doing everything respectfully, not just to the chapel, but to the wider community as well. And then our reputation as a group of people that does things properly, because that's important, then helps us to build more bridges into a wider community. Please, may I have the next slide? So transparency, governance and intention. I have looked at a lot of the different websites. I know a lot of the different chapels have got their own websites. Some are still attached to the GA's website. That's brilliant, but I couldn't navigate that website. I tried really hard, and something in my brain just didn't work. So because of the work that I do on Dreamtime Creative and the Forgotten Women Wakefield website, we decided that we would just go for a really simple WordPress one, which is free. So Lizzie, could we have a little look at that website, please? Thank you. Here we go. That's smashing. So it's just a really simple WordPress website, but I think what I wanted to draw your attention to is the tab tops. Many of you have got this already. We've thought a lot about, it's really hard, isn't it, to capture what is happening in one particular page, but I wanted to draw your attention to policies and governance. When we come on to talking about, thank you, if you want to open it up, that would be really helpful, for the policies and governance one. Oh, simply the best. There's an advert. I love it.
I can't.
It might open.
Yeah.
No. It's okay.
It's
if it doesn't open
this minute. I know your history and heritage one does open. So
yeah, the history, exploring our, yeah, so exploring our, if we go into exploring our history and heritage, that would be great. But whilst that's coming up, the policies and governance one is really important for funders. Having a good website, there's always a bit on there that says there's always a bit on the application form for funders that say, show us your website, where are your policies? So it's just so easy to copy and paste the link, and everything's on there, and it becomes, so it's not a tick box exercise for your policies, because we have to look at them every year, you have to update them. So one of the first things that I did was looked at our existing policies, and I worked with a team of people, including Gavin in the GA, and I brought forward all of our safeguarding stuff that we know, everything to do with health and safety. We went on a first aid course. We've got hygiene certificates, so that it's really transparent to the public that you know what you're doing. And therefore it's again about building the trust, because why would the public come to a stuffy old chapel in the middle of town? Why would they bother doing that? Because there's always that, it's hard to do something new. So for me, I just think it's really important that everything is transparent, and there's a little thing at the bottom there that says trustee, and our copies of our annual reports are available on request, because that's about kind of GDPR stuff. But we've got GDPR, all the policies are on there. So Lizzie, could you possibly drop to the exploring our history and heritage one? Thank you. So on there, this is a relatively new page, and on there are currently 2 videos. And again, this is about thinking, what do people like to see? What is engaging them? And here in Wakefield, we're really lucky, because the council has decided it's going to use history and heritage and cultural attractiveness to get tourists in, and we're very much on that tourist kind of trail because of the work that Dreamtime Creative and the Forgotten Women of Wakefield have done in the past. So you might have noticed a tab on there, the Friends of Westgate Chapel as well. So in those friends, one of those friends is Paul and Hannah, and they are looking at exploring our history and heritage down at the West Yorkshire History Centre. And for the last 3 or 4 meetings, I've said, I need photos. We need photos. Give us videos. Come on, give me something I can give the public. So they did, and we'd like to show you this top one, if that's okay.
Yeah, I'm going to press play now.
Okay, back again with the Westgate Chapel deeds. What we wanted to show you here was the original deed for the setup of the trustees of the chapel. What year is this from, Paul?
1753.
Okay, can you tell us a bit about this document? What it represents?
This document is the legal title to the current Westgate Chapel.
Okay.
And we have a series of documents beforehand, starting from 1750, which are all leading up to buying the land from Joseph Scott, which is in February the 12th, 1750, Sir George Savile, Lord of the Manor of Wakefield, first Unitarian MP, sold to Richard Milnes the plot of land where Westgate Chapel is now. And this big document here is the establishment of the trustees of Westgate Chapel. All these men were named trustees in 1735 of the Westgate End congregation. And along the bottom you can see all the names of the trustees who are amongst the most influential people in Wakefield. So we have Pemberton Milnes, Leonard Slater, who was a doctor, William Naylor, who was involved with one of the largest cloth finishing companies in the country. And went as far as we have all of the Milnes family. So we have Richard Milnes, who founded the congregation, and who died in 1756, not long after this document was written. And we have his son John Milnes and his nephews John Milnes Jr. and James Milnes and his son Robert.
Okay, back again with...
So, thank you, Lizzie. I'd like just to ask Paul to say a few words about why it's important that people know about the history and heritage of the chapel.
Am I on? Can we see me?
Wow.
Yeah, you're on, Paul.
Excellent. Westgate Chapel Archive has possibly 10 to 20,000 pieces of paper in it. The oldest is from 1608, which deals with the proto-congregation. It's not only the story of buildings, it's the story of people and their faith, and how people empowered by their Unitarianism faith helped change both Wakefield, the nation, and influenced ideas and helped transform what was a medieval world into the modern world. And to understand where we need to go, we need to understand where we've come from. And by trying to engage as many people as we can in the fascinating and deeply important history of our congregation, Wakefield, and Unitarians across the country, we can shore up our foundations as a movement. We know who we are, and it will help inform us of where we can go in the future.
Thank you, Paul.
So back to Sarah.
Thank you. Please, may we have the next slide, Lizzie? I think it's about, for me, it's about casting the net as wide as possible. So people will come to the chapel because they're interested in history. They will come to the chapel because they're interested in architecture, or the gardens, or the spirituality, or they're just curious, or it might be the catacombs. It doesn't matter why they come. We just want them to come. That's it. Next slide, please, Lizzie. Brilliant. So casting the net wide, very important, but who runs that, I guess? So for me, it was about gathering an inner circle, and so we set up the Friends of Westgate Chapel. And the big question was, do they need to be Unitarians, or do they need to be of good intention with regards the Unitarian existence, as it were? Now, if you look at the bottom photograph, you've got Maria on the left. She's not a Unitarian. We have Sally Fairweather. She is a Unitarian. Hannah is not a Unitarian, but she's been involved in the research group for about 5 years and is desperately passionate about the philosophy of Unitarians. I don't know what, identifying as a Unitarian, when does that happen? What language, again, is quite a funny old thing. The lady at the back, you'll recognize as Charlotte. She's a Druid. You'll recognize Paul, and then Kerry, I mentioned before. So Charlotte is a Druid, not a Unitarian. Paul is a Unitarian. Kerry is a Catholic. Or a Catholic. She doesn't define herself as a Catholic. She defines herself as a Catholic who's spiritual, who's looking for something that accepts her for who she is. So she's just about to start saying using the I am a Unitarian. So we had lots of meetings, we have lots of discussions, and we act. We eat cake, we laugh, and we move things forward ever so sort of gently, as it were. And we've been meeting for about 4 months now. So that inner circle is now totally invested in the chapel. So whether or not they are Unitarians, for me, it's about that investment and that intention. Time to grow a new generation. Please, may I have the next slide? So ask for help. I don't know the state of the buildings from the other congregational members that are here, but ours is desperate, absolutely desperate. So the roof is leaking. We just had the lead stolen from the vestry, even though that was the first job I did in February. I had that roof sealed. We've just had some torching done, which was amazing on Saturday, we work with a heritage builder, so that means that the majority of the inside of the roof is now sealed. He literally got these daubs of goat hair and ash and lime, and I could hear him going and it was going and sticking on the inside of the roof, and every time I heard that I was like, yes, that's another raindrop not dripping through and ruining the ceiling. So funders do want to help, they really do. So but the trick is knowing what language to use and how to ask for that help and work within their parameters and their boundaries. So this is something that I'm really good at. So you have to demonstrate a need and you've got to show commitment. So this was something that I put together for the ASDA bid, and I've literally just banked a check for £20,000 from ASDA, and that was off the back of this video. Hello, my name is Sarah. We've already worked really hard to clean up the outside and the inside of the garden and the community room. We'd love to leave a legacy of a memory garden to enable all those who have been affected by COVID to have somewhere safe and quiet to contemplate. We'd also love to have a sensory garden so we can work with children with autism. And we'd love a vegetable garden. And we kind of need some TLC on the roof. We also have quite a sad space that really needs redecorating and a bit of plastering, and really need a new kitchen so that groups that come and use the space have got somewhere smart and clean and wonderful to be in. Thank you for listening. So that was literally 1 minute, 10 seconds of setting our intention. What do we need? This is what we need, and why do we need it? And that funders like that. They're like, this organization knows what they want. And actually ASDA were really good because they understand that it's a Dreamtime creative project, but we're an official partnership with the chapel. So that £20,000 check is going straight into creating all the things that we've promised we'll do. And the TV people are coming. I'm on holiday at the end of this week for 2.5 weeks, but immediately after that, TV crews are coming to make a film about the ASDA community project. So we're going to be on the telly, and that's great because it shows that we're amplifying the Unitarian message, which is about caring in the community. Next slide, please, Lizzie. Hello. Oh, hello again. So there's another tiny little video. I'll ask you to press play in a second. So how are we building community? You open up space to culture and creativity. Certainly in Wakefield, it's our USP. You might have your own unique selling point, but certainly for us, it's culture and creativity. Now, that little video was an art installation, and it was up in the trees. Those lanterns were made by the asylum seeking community, and I have those links already with the asylum seeking community and the artists that work with them. Now, what's come off the back of that is the same artist has just said to me, I want to do a much bigger installation. Would you be happy to accommodate that? And could we come into the chapel gardens and the chapel and make those lights? And I'm like, absolutely, because just look how stunning that is on a summer's evening. Next slide, please, Lizzie. all kinds of culture and creativity. That's what builds community. So we had a May Day with I just took a punt. We had a maypole put in. We watched YouTube videos. We had a May Day celebration. We've been working with the asylum seeking community and other different faith groups. There's lots of music goes on in the garden, and art and creativity in response to what people see and experience and feel when they come to the chapel. Because for me, it's not what you do, it's how you're left feeling. How do you feel when you come into the chapel? How do you feel when you leave? How is that connected to you? And then how is that expressed? So we're enabling people to have a really strong, deep experience when they come to the chapel through different creative things. Next slide, please, Lizzie. Utilize the space and grow. One of the things at Dreamtime Creative that we were able to officially partner with the chapel is when I said to the trustees, we've just got £20,000 and all sorts of things going on there. And we have an example of that. So we've got sacred shapes going on in the top left-hand side. We've got an art walk happening where our volunteers were dressed up as characters from the time. That's a really good Instagram pitch. Cakes, again, cakes happen a lot, and utilizing the people that are invested and their knowledge. So poor Paul that night, he had 8 minutes exactly per group to walk around the chapel, give them a quick potted history, and I was literally standing there with a glass of water every time he came round. I was going, Paul, we've got another 8 people here. Can you chivvy it along? Because people want to know. If you remove the barriers, I say if we remove the barriers, then people are interested. They want to come in. If you give them a reason to come in, they'll come. Next slide, please. Even if that involves getting dressed up as a Victorian or Georgian person. Take risks. Seriously, it might sound out there, it might sound really weird or quirky, but bake muffins with the community. The guy that's made the benches, he just said, he just literally came along and said, I want to make you some benches. I've seen what you've been doing on Facebook. Will you let me make them? I'm like, yes. He said, will you pay for the materials? And I went, yes. Didn't know this guy. I just took a risk. And he made 3, I mean, I know him now. He made 3 amazing benches and he bought them and they're all painted up and they look amazing. We, target communities like children on the which we can see there, but don't just bring them in. Give them something to do that's Unitarian based. So drawing, painting, plant pots, then they can take those away and we plant seeds in them, and then we ask them to bring them back and share them in a service. How big are your sunflowers now that you did 6 weeks? It's about doing something here and then picking up here and celebrating it. The ladies in the garden, they're actually doing Tai Chi. And we have yoga in the garden, we have Tai Chi, we have sacred dancing, we have mandala work. There's loads of stuff going on in the garden. Next slide, please. Okay, be bold. The Unitarian community will grow. I am wearing no makeup on there. I've worked an 8-hour day. I'm wearing dungarees, and yet I put that, because obviously it's all about me. I put that on Facebook because it's a real story. Please, could you press play, Lizzie, on that?
Well, there's been some incredible things going on at Westgate Chapel Garden as part of our Nova funded project. We now have 4 very nearly raised vegetable beds cut by our women and pyrographed with incredible messages on by our women. And we also have some amazing planters being made out of clay. Say hi, everybody. Hi. Just incredible skills going on here. Many thanks to Jonathan and Heather, who have just been incredible and enabled us to learn so much about constructing and creating with wood and now creating with clay. So this part of the project is actually coming to an end in the next couple of weeks, and over 15 women have benefited from this, and they're all coming back. They're all going to get involved in the other things that are going on in the garden. Aren't we lucky?
Thank you. I think one of the things that is massively important to me, and I live my life like this, if somebody needs thanking, thank them publicly. Make sure people feel honoured, because then they feel valued and they come back, and then they come to a service or they come to something else and they tell their friends, because it all starts with that honouring of individuals. Next slide, please, Lizzie. Oh, our history and heritage is vital for our survival. We talked a little bit about this, and you know, people that have an historic building can completely exploit this. I'm very aware that there are some people that don't have historic buildings, but it's about finding, as I mentioned before, your unique selling point that makes people want to come in. But every building and the people within it have stories, as Paul said. So that's what we're focusing on. Next slide, please, Lizzie. I'm a bit mindful of the time. So we are at the end of this this presentation now. Moving forward, setting our intentions. So there are options for more obvious spiritual focus here. What you've seen is a lot of infrastructure stuff going on. But from September, we have the first Monday of every month, which is completely dedicated to a Unitarian day with meditation, coffee mornings, lunchtime concerts, exploration of the mandala, a service, and Unitarian discussion, and a history lecture. All the events currently are opened with a blessing and framed within a spiritual context. Just to let you know, we did have the as a success. Like I say, I've literally just banked the check this morning for £20,000. So that's fantastic for me, because not only do we get the new kitchen, we get the story of how the kitchen's going in, the story of the revamp of the vestry. So that means that people will know about it and will be able to hire that space, because we need a funding stream in, and that's part of one of the streams we're looking at. Chapel of Sanctuary, our secretary is just looking at applying to be part of a funding, a sanctuary stream, and cementing the existing partnerships. It's all happening. So one of the things that with regards to wider involvement in the Unitarian community locally, nationally and internationally, one of the things I'd like to offer is a bid writing session for the Unitarian community, so that we can look at how to write bids together and then submit those bids and see what comes of them. So that's sort of setting my intention to give back to the Unitarian community, who has supported me all the way through this journey.